Dr. Winters, thank you for letting me interview you today. I've been very fortunate to have you as a friend and a mentor for 10 years. So knowing you, it really helped me do the QNRT because I knew how non-judgmental that you were. I remember one time telling you that I was disorganized, and this was probably 10 years ago, and you're like, Kim, you can find someone to organize you, and I did, and that was really great advice. And so when I saw the QNRT on Facebook, I thought, I gotta try it, this is something Dr. Winters is doing. And I was really amazed. I do feel like this is God working through you, because the chances of having QNRT in a little town like Paducah is pretty slim. I have one friend that's driving 3 hours to do QNRT in Canada. And it's been really interesting to me. We started out working on traumas, and now for the last year, we're just working on what's happening on in my life. Like right now I have a friend that, one of my best friends that's ill, and we've been working on that. And I just feel incredibly blessed for this technology, and I just want to thank you and hope that you can help some people.
Oh, thank you.
Can you tell me about yourself and why you decided to get into chiropractic?
Well, I got into chiropractic because I was a sick kid, on and off. I mean, I had a fairly good childhood, but got mono when I was in junior, and so I got a little, in high school, I got a little experience with chiropractic. It actually helped me get over mono, chronic mono. And then when I got to college, I was doing pretty good again. I started taking antibiotics for my skin. My health just went downhill. I went from a straight A student to getting my first D. I went from playing on a nationally ranked college football team to not making the team. I ended up dropping out of school, couldn't get any help, and as a chiropractor, kind of works a bit like I do now. That really helped me get back on track, because he helped me with some nutrition things, and he adjusted me, and I started moving in the right direction. And then he took me to Palmer College of Chiropractic to career day, and then the rest is history.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you tell me why you decided to start doing QNRT, and maybe what QNRT is, because some people aren't going to know what that is.
Yeah, so in terms of, QNRT stands for Quantum Neuro Reset Therapy. So it's quantum here refers to big change. So big change in the nervous system to reset it, how it responds to different things. And we'll talk quite a bit more in a second. As far as doing it, we always recognize that our emotions were a big part of our health, and a big a block in our health oftentimes, and most people with chronic health issues had a lot of emotional stress at some time or another. And so if we really wanted to get sick people well, and people that were struggling, and people that had been lots of different places and hadn't gotten any help, then we had to go deeper. And so we did different types of emotional work before QNRT, various renditions of it, so to speak, but there's nothing that beats QNRT in terms of going deep, getting quick changes in a person, and really rewiring how they see the world. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, can you kind of explain how QNRT works?
Yeah, so what's different about QNRT is there's lots of energy-based techniques out there for emotions, like tapping, you tap certain points, and other techniques like that, but those work more on the energy systems of the body, more along through the acupuncture meridians and so forth. QNRT works specifically with specific lobes of the brain and the tissues that are innervated by those lobes of the brain. So it's very brain based. Now when we check a person, if I put it in a nutshell term, I say we examine the computer inside your skull. We check the circuit boards on your body. We figure out what programs you're running. Sometimes those are programs of inflammation to things in our environment, foods, infections, toxins, etc. Sometimes those are self-sabotage programs, like we call them negative patterns, and that would be like failure, like you always see things through a lens of failure. And then we have faulty belief patterns, and those could be things like feeling like you're unsafe, or you can't trust anybody, those kinds of things. So we figure out what patterns you're running, bring that up essentially on the screen of the brain, and then reset the brain. So if we thought about we don't go into the specific test for out of respect for the people that developed the technique. But if we thought of a reflex response here, for example, if I took a reflex hammer and I tested this reflex, I might get a normal reflex, I might get a hyper reflex, I might just barely not get any reflex. Well, that would mean something. Everybody's had a reflex tested on their body.
Yeah.
So that's an example. So we're going to do different reflex tests that are going to identify which area of the brain is involved. Is it the cerebellum that deals with balance? And emotion-wise, the cerebellum would deal with feeling unbalanced, unsure, victimized, oversensitive, or unsafe. Mm-hmm. If we did some reflexes on the body that showed it was related to the heart, well, the heart tied in with the cerebellum would relate to feeling stabbed in the heart or betrayed. And these are stories that after the developer in working through this process of developing it himself and listening to thousands of patients' stories and then carefully documenting those, he realized that there's common stories from each area of the brain and common stories from each tissue area of the brain. So that's why when we were doing a session, we're actually looking at a book, because there would be 10,000 stories to memorize, so to speak, if we weren't looking at what he's documented. But it's very, very reliable in terms of the common theme from that area of the brain and that tissue area.
Absolutely.
So it's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
You've experienced that, right?
Yeah, I have.
So all I do is I find that information, I say this looks like something around this age, around this type of stress, like in this case, feeling unsafe or unbalanced and feeling betrayed. And what do you know about that? And he'll tell me something specific to your life around that age that relates to that. It's uncanny, and people marvel at it every day, and we do too.
Yeah. The next question I have for you is, I've tried to explain this to people that's not really talk therapy, because a lot of people are intimidated by that it's not really that, but it's kind of hard to explain what you're doing here, because you say, what happened at 4? Oh, well, I saw my dad drive down the driveway, and it's not really talk therapy, but you're kind of pulling out what happened. So can you help me verbalize this a little bit?
Yeah, we're pulling out information from the subconscious brain, not the conscious brain. That's what's so different about QNRT. You can do lots of therapy, lots of coaching and things. Those are conscious brain activities, and those are valuable, but we're working with the subconscious brain, where the reactive parts of our nervous system are that are going to block us if we don't take care of those areas. So one of the things that you're best at, Kim, as far as anybody we work with, is what I might call coach and clear. Meaning you have certain goals in your life, you get coaching around those, I clear your brain around those, and it works beautifully together. Because if you get the conscious brain and the subconscious working in the same direction, it's great. But if you got the conscious working one direction and you got the subconscious working the other direction, this is going to win eventually, because your nervous system is wired that way. You can push here, and you can have a degree of success, but it's eventually going to collapse down to what the subconscious brain is doing.
I love that. That's so true. And I've witnessed that. I've been someone who just wouldn't give up on a goal, and I keep going and going and going and not have success at it. And through QNRT, I've had a lot of these goals that I've been able to have breakthroughs. So thank you for that also.
Yeah, because without sharing details, I know you're doing amazing in your business.
Thank you.
And you were telling me some of the different achievements in your life, and I'm sure that they're substantially better than they were 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, I suffered from major anxiety until I was 30 years old, and I was going to ask you, how could you help a patient with through QNRT help heal their anxiety?
Well, one, we're going to pull up traumas that have helped trigger them to be anxious. And in some cases, those are childhood traumas, different abuses or things that they experienced. In some cases, those are things that we don't classically, or the public doesn't classically think of as a trauma, but it was very significant to that person. So one person could be sexually abused, and another person could just be made fun of by other kids and didn't feel they were as smart as the other kids. But to the brain, it might have been just as devastating. So we don't really judge. This is a certain grade of trauma, and this is another grade of trauma. That's all trauma, and we've all had some. In some ways.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's one thing when I'm talking to people. A lot of times they'll say, you know, I can see that they're struggling, but they're like, I really haven't had any trauma in my life. But like you said, it may have been just, you know, that they didn't feel like that the fact that in second grade everyone was calling them names, and that was very traumatic and caused them a lot of issues.
Everything that overwhelms our nervous system that we don't have the resources to deal with at the time is going to be trauma.
Yeah.
And so some of the greatest resets I've seen in terms of improvements in health, and we have one video that's out there of amazing recovery of a guy that had a spinal cord lesion and couldn't feel his feet, and then he got QNRT and he regained control of his feet and sensation in his feet, and now he can referee basketball and so forth. But one of his biggest traumas was, and I can share this because I have permission, was in childhood, and he just didn't feel as smart as the other kids. And when we released that, tremendous improvements in his health.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you can't judge you can't consciously judge what your subconscious, how it reacted.
Yeah. I as I get older, I see that more and more, that some things that wouldn't appear to be traumatic to people were very traumatic.
Yes.
Yeah. So
and then I want to continue on. You ask about how to help a patient with anxiety.
Yeah.
So there are traumatic triggers, and then there are things that have gotten out of balance in terms of our brainwave patterns, and that we measure with an EEG. Not the kind of EEG that you get at the hospital, but an EEG that measures the slower waves and the faster waves in the brain and the ratios of those, and tells us how the brain is working if it's stuck in an unhealthy pattern. And so we see patterns, for example, differences in our beta waves there that would lead a person to just feel anxious all the time. And then we will also look at metabolic things like with their blood sugar, or we do a urine test now that measures sugar, salts, pH, and proteins. And certain imbalances there, too much proteins in the urine or blood sugar irregularities, those will make a person feel more anxious. We've got structural things like they may not be able to breathe right, their diaphragm's all locked up, or their posture's poor so they can't get good oxygenation, so that affects their brain. So there's all these different things, and one of the things that's unique for us is we have a mnemonic called HIDDEN, which is 4 factors that we look at: hormonal balance, immune strength, detoxification efficiency, and neurological connections. So not the QNRT falls under that neurological connection, but any of those areas can help trigger anxiety. So yeah, I'm a QNRT practitioner and a master practitioner, but I don't, that's not the only thing we do. We help people get healthy, and QNRT is one of the tools to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually, you tell I'm a fan of QNRT, so most of these questions are around that. How does QNRT affect the nervous system and brains and the brain for these really big shifts that we see?
It lets the nervous system reboot, reset the program, or update the program. If we're doing this video on a computer, if this computer was running Windows 8, it's going to be slow and clunky, and it's not going to function in our current environment of 2021 or 2022. So I'd have to update the program to Windows 10 to work right. So I'm finding, again, the programs in your nervous system that aren't working right, and updating them essentially. And then you can your brain can work more efficiently. You can remember things and recall things. We're working with a patient right now who basically moved from 3 or 4 states away fairly suddenly, retired fairly suddenly because his grandkids were going to be in foster care if they didn't come take care of him, because their child wasn't doing the best for parenting. And that was the situation they were in, but it was a big shock for him. It was a big trauma. He left his world there where he lived, and that disappointment and that grief for where he lived, he had an important position in the city there. That grief and that disappointment manifested in terms of losing his memory, getting all messed up with taking directions and even finding places, and you'd think he was spinning fast to Alzheimer's, but he's already doing better releasing the trauma, and then we're working with some metabolic things with his liver as well. So things are starting to turn around, but again, we had to update those programs related to grief and disappointment and etc. because his brain was not going to work right unless we did.
Yeah, that's really fascinating how the mind and the body are so connected, and I know you see that a lot. That's really, really fascinating.
It is the key thing, and we work with a lot of autoimmune patients, and we've had patients from around 20 states now fly in to see us or drive in to see us, and all those autoimmune patients have a significant history of trauma in one way or another. And there's research on that based on the CDC's work with called ACE studies, adverse childhood event studies, and then people who've had so many ACEs in their childhood have certainly a greater risk of autoimmune disease in adulthood. So there's papers on that, so it's not all our theory.
Yeah.
So we've all had trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we all function better if we get it reset.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of my friends said that it usually takes them about 5 or 6 sessions before they really feel a big shift, and I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I personally don't work with anybody under 3 sessions. We've had some great changes with 3 sessions, but most people are going to take 5 or 6 or longer, and certainly people with a lot of autoimmune disease and things like that, they may be pushing more 10 to 12 sessions. Somebody like yourself that's using it for business success and major change in your life, you're going to get more sessions, and you've been doing it regularly for quite some time. So
yeah.
So it all depends on the person's goals.
Yeah, and I think I had like 6 months where I just life was just pure happiness, pure bliss, and then other times like now I'm coming more because I have something that I'm working through. So I guess it's kind of according to what's coming up in my life also.
Yeah. So some patients may get 6 sessions, 10 sessions, and then they may follow up once a month to stay on track. Some people just are doing great, and we say, hey, life is going to show you something. When it does,
yeah,
and you feel stuck on it, then it's time to come in and get a session.
Yeah, that makes sense. I noticed that you're a master QNRT practitioner, and I also noticed that our sessions have varied a little bit, and you brought some new stuff in. I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, well, QNRT is a work in development that Dr. John Turner in Roswell, Georgia, that developed it. He's always coming up with new things, and then I'm starting to contribute a little bit to that as well. Being a master practitioner, there's only, right now, besides Dr. Turner, 3 in the whole world. So we're one of those, but it takes working with the EEG as well, and it takes doing the brain balancing techniques with that are specific to chiropractors. So where we balance the right brain and we balance the left brain with a gentle adjustment. There's no twisting or popping. So it takes that kind of work and all the other brain exercise work and things and then 4 years of doing QNRT and going through all the programs, all this different trainings with that to be a master practitioner, and that's what we do, and we're excited about it. We get big changes with people.
Yeah, it is really exciting. I notice a lot of times when people have experienced a lot of trauma, they kind of see the world through a lens of fear or anxiety, or maybe both. How does QNRT help with this?
Oh, tremendously, because we can find these core driver patterns that we call them, they're faulty belief patterns. And say we experience something that injured us or injured us physically or injured us emotionally, then we might see the world as unsafe. So we're literally looking through colored, I don't have them right here, but colored glasses, so to speak, of how we see the world because of that trauma. So that's how we ended up explaining it to ourselves. And some of those core drivers can be things like feeling powerless. There's a lot of people that they have something happened and they explain it to themselves, that's because I'm powerless. And then that sets up a situation where if they're powerless to get healthy, until somebody clears that, you're going to see just a big list of doctors after doctor after doctor that they've gone to because they feel on the subconscious level again that they're powerless to be healthy. So it doesn't matter what the doctor does. Eventually, even if they got some improvement at first, again, they're going to backset because the subconscious is going the other way and they see themselves as powerless. So we could see ourselves as nothing or unwanted or unworthy or unlovable or unsafe or out of balance or defective. And so QNRT just helps change those lenses by which we're seeing ourselves.
Now, another question I had is around depression. I know a lot of people during this pandemic have kind of become shut in and they've developed depression because they haven't been isolated. Have you worked with folks around this?
Yes, the pandemic has created a whole new layer of stress for almost everyone. And frankly, I'm just going to say some of you out there are ignoring it, hoping it will go away, not dealing with it, thinking you'll be fine, and you really know you're stuck. And if you don't get it unstuck, it's going someplace.
Yeah.
So that disappointment or that grief is going to end up like the patient I was talking about earlier as a memory problem, or it's going to end up as another physical health problem, but it's going to get expressed someplace, somewhere, and you just better take care of it now. But everybody's, again, we can't judge anybody, anybody's traumas because you don't know how different things affected someone else. So there's some people that went through this pandemic stress, like huge stresses with their business, whether it was closed down or other things, and adjusted to it and seemingly did okay. There's other people that had other stuff, similar stuff, and it just knocked them on their rear, so to speak. And wherever you're at, there's a chance most of us need some help, at least to function at our best right now.
Yeah, I think you're so right. We're all on different paths, and that's something that I've really come to realize. We're all on such different paths. Dr. Winters, what have you learned most during this pandemic? That
we have to have pliable brains, brains that can shift with what's going on. There's lots of things that you don't agree with. It doesn't make any difference what end of the political spectrum you're at. You don't agree with somebody.
Yeah.
And you don't like somebody else's decisions. And you don't like some of the things that are happening, etc. But if you can't adjust to it, and it's eating you on the inside, it's going to cause some problems. And we just have to, and QNRT is one of the best possible ways, and we also have the neurofeedback, which is computerized brain training, and the brain balance adjusting, and other tools to help. But if you don't have your brain pliable where it can adjust to that disappointment, adjust to that temporary failure that occurred, or adjust to getting all upset about everybody else's business, then you're going to have some problems. And we this is a funny story, and I'll try to tell it without identifying anybody, but we had somebody that came to see us literally on the verge of divorce because the wife was listening to conservative media and videos. The husband was listening to liberal media and videos, and they were about to tear each other apart. And my job was to get their brain flexible enough that they could see that they could live together with different opinions. And we did that in just a couple sessions, and they're still going good now.
That's
wonderful. But they were at a breaking point if we didn't get their brain pliable, flexible. Because what I did was I gave them some examples of people that had totally different political opinions and were married to each other. And I said, if those people can do it, I got their brain flexible. If they can do it, I can do it. We can do it. And so I got the brain more pliable about it, and things were good. But if I hadn't got the brain more pliable about it, they were really headed in a bad direction. I
can see that. I've heard people at different offices and different places just being at war with each other over the politics of this pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Winters.
All right.
I sure appreciate you.
I'm
Thanks
so
much.
excited to do this
Yeah,
interview
yeah,
with you.
great.
It's amazing.
Great.
All right, look forward to,
Next 5 years.
yeah, that's right. Thank you.